Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our Reengineering the Chess Classics series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and this series of videos is inspired by my new book, Reengineering the Chess Classics, written together with my childhood coach, Steve Giddins. And that book is all about classic games, some well-known, some less well-known, and analysing them with engines and discovering amazing things. And well, this series of videos is just like that. But I'm really focusing on a couple of classic players who I've really grown to love throughout this whole project. And well, we're still focusing on Dawid Janowski. And we're going to take a look at a fantastic game, well, for part of it at least, between Dawid Janowski and Nelson Pillsbury at the Nuremberg tournament of 1896. So let's have a look how it went. I wonder if you can guess which opening this is. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, the Berlin. And after castles, knight takes e4, rook e1, knight d6, knight takes e5, bishop e7. We get a position that has become very familiar in modern chess. Now, you might think that the first time that the Berlin was really a hot theoretical topic was well, after the Kasparov-Kramnik match. But in actual fact, round the turn of the century, the Berlin was really hot, and it was played a great deal, and there was a lot of theoretical activity around it. But somehow, I mean, my impression is, looking at the top games of the period, that somewhere it just sort of, people sort of lost interest somehow and stopped playing it, despite it having a very good reputation. I mean, for example, Siegbert Tarrasch in his 300 master games said that, Black doesn't have any problems in the standard Berlin endgame. Black either draws or wins. And in his beginner's book, The Game of Chess, written somewhat later, Tarrasch said again that 3 knight f6 equalizes completely for Black. But I think that that really, I think a couple of things maybe played a role. For example, I think for Tarrasch, who played the Berlin occasionally with great success, playing some great endgames, it really was too drawish for him, and he preferred something a bit more exciting, like the open Lopez, which he popularized and did a great deal of work on. This was really what he preferred. Felt like there were plenty of chances for a win here as well, not just the drawing chances that you get in the Berlin. And I think perhaps the other thing was that the player of the black pieces in this game, Nelson Pillsbury, died very young. And there are 41 games of Nelson Pillsbury playing the Berlin with pretty good success rate. Quite a few Berlin endgames, I think about 5 or 6 of them. And I think probably if he'd lived longer, maybe played a World Championship match against Lasker, maybe we really would have known the Berlin and would really have become embedded in chess that much sooner. But because he died so young, the main practitioner disappeared. It had a very dull drawing reputation. Yeah, players moved on to other lines. So here actually Janowski played a line that was pretty popular in those days, even though it didn't necessarily have even then a great reputation as the best line. It did offer nice attacking chances, and I think that Steinitz played it against Zukertort in their World Championship match. Bishop d3. So it's quite nice. I mean, the bishop is pointing towards h7, so you straight away feel that some attacks are going to take place. And you can play b3, bishop b2, get the bishop active, get those two bishops pointing towards the king. Very aggressive style of play. Also, a quick knight c3 into d5, embarrassing the bishop on e7 is also on the cards, because obviously this knight on d6 is blocking the d7 pawn. Now, the normal way of playing is something like knight e5, rook e5, and castles. And Black can, for example, this is a game dragon against stockfish. c6 stops the knight from coming into d5, rook e1, and then knight e8. And we aim for d5 and knight f6 and bishop d6, and we're organised again. White has a slight initiative, but nothing too amazing. But these were the early pioneer days, and Pillsbury came up with something that I'd never seen before. He played the move knight b4. And what's the aim of knight b4? Well, obviously you want to chase away the bishop on d3, so that it's pointing towards the king. You want to chase the bishop away, and then afterwards, your king can castle kingside and should be safer. So Janowski sort of fell in with those with that plan and played bishop f1. But Stockfish points out, and this was pointed out, I think, in contemporary annotations, but I'm not quite sure whether well, it's in German, so I'm not 100% sure now anymore whether they realised how strong it was. But for Stockfish, this is virtually winning in actual fact. So we're hitting b4 and g7 here, knight d3, and then queen takes g7. So attacking the rook on h8. If you try to be clever and defend the rook on h8 and attack the queen, then we simply got knight takes d3 check, for example, which is fairly terminal. So knight takes c1, and then we go queen h8, bishop f8, and d4. And well, I mean, we've got plenty of threats here. It's really going to be coming in for black. I mean, there's one quite funny little line that basically all the engines played. Actually, all the engines followed the same line up till move 30. So you can imagine pretty forcing. Knight c3, f6, knight d5, queen g7 takes, king d8, takes, knight h5, knight takes c2, and now this nice move, knight takes g7. This is kind of the key to it all, because if knight takes a1, then we've got bishop g5. Checkmate. So king e7 played rook b1, and well, white's a pawn up, and obviously quite a big initiative. The rooks are going to get active once this knight moves away. Yeah, very difficult position for black, and well, the engines didn't manage to hold it. So actually, yeah, move 7, yeah, already basically a winning chance for Janowski. But okay, it's complicated. Even Komodo MCTS, so not the real Komodo dragon, but the slightly tweaked neural netty version, doesn't actually see queen g4. So well, it's obviously slightly difficult to assess. But bishop f1 played by Janowski, and then castles. Yeah, I mean, the engines want to play actually knight f5 in this position, d4, d6. Get this move in. And then castle, c3, knight c6. And white's got a slight edge here, a bit more space. Knight's still a little bit awkward here, but it's not very much indeed for white. What did my engines play? Oh, a4 was one idea, a5 and a6. This was a game of Stockfish against Dragon, or yeah, Stockfish against Dragon there. It's a slight edge for white, but nothing amazing. So, yeah, Pillsbury played castles, and now knight c3 from Janowski. And yeah, the engines still want to play d4 and c3, but knight c3 is quite typical for this line. This knight's going to get chased back, and then you're going to jump in with knight d5. So knight f5 played, just get the knight out of the way, just so you get in d6. a3, knight c6, and knight d5. And yeah, here Pillsbury had to take, I suppose, a principled decision, really. What the engine just wants, the engine just says, well, okay, just take off, play d6, give white the two bishops, but, with a symmetrical pawn structure like this, it's never going to be that terrible. I mean, I'd rather be white in this position, but it's not really that much. But Pillsbury, yeah, very aggressive player, and, yeah, just didn't want to give anything away, really, and played a very risky move, bishop c5. Why is it risky? Well, you're still waiting before playing this move d6, and this bishop feels exposed somehow. There's b4s and stuff like that. And this knight's loose as well. Feels like there could be problems, or at the very least, it feels like black's really playing on the edge there. So yeah. Knight d3 was played by Janowski. The engines come up with something very interesting, actually. They want to play this move knight g4, which is quite nice. I mean, the bishop's attacking f2, so the knight actually covers it. Also if black tries to play something like queen h4. And what you're aiming for after d6 is to go b4, and you're just looking to play bishop b2, and then you're going to have, ideas like knight f6 check. So yeah, I mean, bishop e6 was a dragon against Stockfish, but yeah, check, b takes c5, bishop b2, c3, d4. You know, you're willing to sacrifice any number of pawns just to open up all the diagonals. And yeah, I mean, dragon beat stockfish from here, so that's normally a good sign that the position's pretty difficult for black. Janowski played something quite interesting as well, just knight d3, you know, retreating, hitting the bishop with tempo, and yeah, also looking at some b4 ideas. So bishop d6, again, you know, Pillsbury really not wanting to give anything away, not wanting to give, you know, 2 bishops away to Janowski, really trying to keep everything in the position. It's very, very risky indeed. So Janowski played queen g4, not necessarily the best move, but quite a challenging one. And here knight fd4 was played by Pillsbury, and actually it's quite interesting because in his annotations to the game, I think in Die moderne Schachpartie, haha, I hope I pronounced that right, Michael. So Tarash recommends queen h4, which is not too bad, probably better than what Pillsbury played. You know, white's got a nice advantage there, but okay, queens are off, so you know, a few chances at least to survive a bit better there. The engines wanted to play knight cd4, and we're going to see this one a lot, and the big idea is that black wants to play the move c6 and just chase away this knight on d5. So b4 was the engine move, c6 knight e3, and now Tarash's idea, queen h4 here, bishop b2 knight f5. And yeah, it's not pleasant for black. I mean, I'd be very nervous with these pieces loose and this bishop still undeveloped, but yeah, the engines think that black can hold, but wouldn't necessarily you know, wouldn't necessarily be what I would guess would be good there. But knight fd4 played from Pillsbury, and clearly, you know, by attacking the pawn on c2, he was obviously hoping to, you know, to drive back the white pieces. But Janowski was having none of it. b4, and this is very strong indeed. You can't actually take on c2 here. Janowski calculated this very nicely, because we just go bishop b2, threatening queen takes g7. And if you go f6, I've got a little tactic. Maybe just take a little moment if you want to see it. Actually, there's loads of them, but bishop takes f6 takes rook e8 check. It's quite gorgeous with this happening afterwards. So I mean, it's not just a bit lost. Knight takes c2, it's really completely lost. So Pillsbury played the only move, f5, just hitting the queen and driving it back. And well, I mean, the engines feel that the queen d1 is the best here. And after knight e6, bishop b2, b6 we go g3 to be able to maintain the knight on d5 with bishop on g2, bishop a6, f4, h6, knight e3, king h7, h4. I wonder whether you'd be able to guess that this was a Berlin, actually. I mean, I'd probably guess at some weird Dutch or something like that. No, this pawn, d-pawn on d2 still. Yeah, I don't know really, but it feels, you know, like really weird. Maybe I'd think a Sokolsky Dutch where white played 1b4 and black played 1f5 or something. But yeah, white's got a pleasant position here really. I mean, this pawn's weak. We might hit it with bishop h3, and we've got stuff like c4, you know, and yeah, this bishop's very, very powerful indeed. You know, it's a nice position for white here really. So queen d1 was best, but yeah, Janowski wasn't worried at all. He just went queen h5, offered the c2 pawn and the exchange, and off we go. Yeah, I mean, again, you know, you sometimes you don't quite realise, you know, how much effort this must have cost in the good old days. Really, you know, you're just making this up as you go along. You've never had an engine that could, you know, check any of this stuff. So you're just, you know, really relying on your intuition and your instinct about, you know, what you can get away with. And you know, it's way more risky than anything we do in the computer age, really. So really very impressive. I love Janowski's play for this and the next number of moves. So knight c2 played, and now bishop b2, and this is an amazing moment actually. So I'll just show you what Pillsbury played. He played the move knight takes a1, and this is actually a really bad move. In some ways you sort of have a suspicion that it might not be the best move, because after all, you know, we're forking both these guys, so you know, it's not like you have to take the rook now somehow. You know, you could always do it later, because you know that you're always going to be attacking one rook if one of the rook moves. So You should do something about that. And the amazing defense that the engines have, they just consider this to be completely equal virtually, is they play the move b5. b5. Why would you play b5? Why would you delay taking either one of the rooks? Let's have a look first of all at what the engines think after knight takes a1. After knight takes a1, they don't want to take the knight back as Janowski did. They want to play the move not bishop a1 but knight 3 f4. And the idea here is that the bishop is coming into c4 and we're going to get all sorts of amazing and painful double checks. And it's just completely winning for white. Bishop c4 is completely unstoppable. So what b5 does is stop the bishop coming to c4 in one move. But I was sort of thinking, well, okay, but what if I go, knight 3 f4? I mean, after all, I'm threatening to go, bishop b5 here or whatever. I'm getting my pieces involved, like, why isn't this still really, really dangerous? And the amazing thing here is that black plays this move knight 6 d4. And you need this knight on c2 in order to play the knight on to d4. And what does the knight on d4 do? Well, it blocks the a1 h8 diagonal for the moment. Not particularly easy to get rid of it. It protects the pawn on b5, so there's no way that this bishop is getting onto this diagonal in the near future. And of course it's threatening the move c7 to c6, chasing away the knight on d5 and also protecting the pawn on b5, which means that c4 is covered. And I mean, the engines basically feel that this is just completely equal. Or actually I think after knight 6 d4 in this position, this one's already better for black. The engines actually want to play a4 to try and break that up, but we go knight 6 d4, knight e3, b takes a4. The game continues, but somehow how the engines are seeing it, white's pieces have been pushed back somehow. So we need b5 to stop bishop c4, and we need to keep this knight on c2 to enable the knight to come to d4 and block the diagonal. But if you ask me, how would you defend this with black? I don't think I would have a clue, to be honest. I really don't. This is just space age stuff somehow. So after knight a1, knight 3 f4 would have been the best. And to be honest, I'm a bit surprised that Janowski didn't play that. But on the other hand, bishop takes a1 is still something like +4 for white. So maybe Janowski just looked at it and thought, well, I don't need to bother. This is just so strong for me. And, the key point is, what's the big drawback of having taken on here? You don't have knight d4 anymore. So black actually doesn't have a single way of blocking any of these diagonals at all. Pillsbury played knight e7, and we got knight f4. And he played the very natural move c6 here, trying to drive the knight away from d5. But now some lovely tactical genius from Janowski. Rook takes c7. Now if you go bishop e7, I just go bishop c4 here. And, I think you can imagine what happens here. Takes check, king h8, and knight g6. Checkmate. Really, really powerful. So Pillsbury played the appalling queen takes e7. Knight e7, bishop e7, and now I have my glass of English dessert wine next to me, and I really need it, because can you imagine that Janowski in this crucial game? I mean, Pillsbury was going to be one of his main rivals for first place. He's played so beautifully. Janowski failed to win this position as white. Quite incredible, and I've looked through a great deal of Janowski's games, and to be honest, looking at his maximum strength, you couldn't imagine that this guy did not become world champion, because there is some amazing play. But it's when you see stuff like this that you realise that what he really didn't have was sort of ice cold blood running through his veins, in the same way that a Capablanca or a Lasker or even an Alekin in his prime had. He was a temperamental, nervous player. I think that's the impression I get, and all sorts of things could happen to him. And we'll just have a quick look to see what happens, because it's a little bit tragic. So Tarash points out that bishop c4 was just completely winning. You take, and you go this move bishop f7, and the idea is simply I want to go bishop g6, threatening mate, and after h6 I've just got queen takes h6 with mate, and bishop f6, I just take and bishop g6, and that would have been that would have been an absolutely brilliant game. Janowski's move queen h3 was also very strong. I mean, actually, what he's aiming for is knight h5, queen c3, which, to be fair, also looks very powerful. I'm surprised Pillsbury didn't resign, to be honest. But, you know, I've been reading quite a bit about Janowski, okay, in German, so I'm maybe not getting the whole picture. But in this wonderful biography of his by Daniel Ackerman, it's called Vabank. Yeah, he notes that you know, Janowski was a player who did not himself like to resign. He carried on, you know, way past you know, the moment to resign. So maybe he got a taste of his own medicine, and yeah, you know, maybe maybe that was a little bit unfortunate here. So d5 played, knight h5, and now g6 from Pillsbury, and queen c3. So coming into to g7, and king f7 was played. Queen g7 check, king e8, and now an absolutely horrific moment. Tarash points out, and the engines certainly concur, that bishop f6 here was the key move to win. The idea is that if you go rook f7, this is Tarash's line, you go queen g8, rook f8, and knight g7 check is really powerful. King d8, I've got queen f8, and king d7, queen e6. Not at all difficult, you have to say. But Janowski made the absolute howler, knight f6, and after takes, rook f7, this is the sort of thing that happens to me in Bullet. It emerged that White's actually losing one of his pieces, one of his beautiful bishops, because, yeah, queen h8, you go rook f8, you can't move away and protect that bishop. So, yeah, I mean, queen g8 check was played, rook f8, queen h7, rook f6, and this is, of course, still completely winning for White. But I think Janowski was so utterly shocked by what happened that yeah, he didn't play badly, but just at some moment he just took some very odd decisions. So this is all absolutely fine. This is all perfectly fine. Some of these are certainly not the engine's best move, but you know, he's breaking open the black position here. You know, he's created a passed f pawn, which is pretty good. Also some loose pawns there. But after this move c5, what he did was a little bit strange here, because instead of just playing f4, you know, which really is the most natural move here, just start getting that f pawn rolling. You know, black's completely paralyzed. I mean, if you go here. Oops, sorry. If after something like f4 you take on here, I go queen f8 check. You know, I mean, there's nothing that black can do here. But you play queen f8 check, king c7, just chase the black king off the back rank, just to win a pawn on b5. And actually, you know, White's still winning, of course. But now we're talking about patience and long wins, and you know, using the queen to great effect to attack targets on both squares. And well, I think, you know, probably Janowski was so utterly upset with himself for what he'd done with his you know, astonishingly good position, that he didn't manage to win it, and the game was drawn 20 moves later. I can't bear to play with it. Even with my wine, I can't bear to play through it. So if you fancy it, Janowski against Pillsbury, Nuremberg, 1896. But yeah, I prefer to keep a little bit close to the stellar play, which was, you know, very, very good from Janowski up till you know, up till about move 23. But very, very interesting. I mean, I was quite surprised to see so many games with the Berlin, and see, you know, the players really fighting to get any sort of advantage and trying all sorts of lines. You know, Tarash was very keen on this variation. I think d4, knight d6, and then d5. I think I'm getting that one right, and you know, trying all sorts of gambits like bishop a4, and you know, all those sorts of lines, and also this one, which has become just a drawing line in the modern game. But you know, all sorts of things like that were being tried out at that time, you know, with White players desperately trying to get an advantage. But as I said, I think, you know, the line sort of faded away. Yeah, probably because its main exponent died so young and tragically. And also maybe because black players just thought, well, you know, this is so dull and drawing, I'd rather try something a little bit sharper. But there we are. Hope you enjoyed that game. Part of it was gorgeous, at least, just showing the genius of Dawid Janowski. If you enjoyed the video, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, take a look at my new book, Reengineering the Chess Classics. You won't regret it. And otherwise, you know, thanks for being part of the channel, and hope to see you at the next video. Thanks for watching.